What would you do if you saw a stranger frozen in the middle of a snowstorm with no clue they were one of the richest people in the state? That night, a single father driving home with his daughter saw hazard lights blinking through the blizzard. He could have kept going. He had every reason to, but he didn't. Instead, he broke through a frozen window, pulled an unconscious woman into his arms, and took her home without asking her name. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that this woman was a billionaire CEO. And the choice he made in the middle of that icy road would ripple into a life-changing chain of events that would flip both their worlds upside down. By the end of this story, you'll realize one act of kindness can rewrite destinies. Stay with us because the most powerful moment is still to come. The snow was coming down so hard it looked like the sky itself was falling apart. Somewhere along Route 16, far outside the lights of Maple Hollow, a battered blue pickup truck crawled forward against the wind. Inside, Derek Hayes gripped the wheel like his life depended on it. His hands, calloused from years of working engines, trembled slightly, not from fear but exhaustion. 12 hours under busted hoods will do that to a man. Behind him, bundled in a blanket that had seen better days, his 6-year-old daughter Zoe was fast asleep, her small lips parting with each soft breath. The girl had her mother's eyes wide, calm, and far too knowing for her age. Derek glanced back once more to make sure she was warm, then fixed his eyes on the snowy road. He should have stayed in town. The storm had hit faster than expected, a typical surprise in rural Montana. But Zoe needed to be home. She needed her own bed, her own pillow, the only constants left in their world. Then he saw it, flashing hazard lights pulsing weakly through the snowfall. A black luxury SUV, its back tires buried deep in a snowbank, the front crooked like it had slid off the road. No movement, no signs of life. Derek slowed down, pulling onto the shoulder as gently as possible. His instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. He adjusted the heat toward Zoe's face, kissed her forehead, and said softly, "I'll be right back, baby girl." He stepped out. The wind slapped him, instantly sharp, as needles stinging his skin and soaking through his coat. He trudged through the snow boots, crunching in rhythm with his pounding heart. As he reached the driver's side window, he cupped his hands and peered in. A woman, slumped over the steering wheel, unmoving, lips tinged blue. "Hey," Derek banged on the glass. No response. He ran back to his truck, yanked the crowbar from under the seat, and raced back. He'd done this before on junkyard jobs, not in a snowstorm with someone's life on the line. The lock gave with a pop. The door swung open. She fell into his arms, freezing, barely breathing. He didn't stop to ask who she was. Didn't ask why she was out here, or how a woman like that pale-skinned, tailored coat, pearls still on, ended up unconscious on a country highway. He just wrapped her in his arms and carried her like she weighed nothing. Back at the truck, Derek shoved his coat over her body, turned the heat up to max, and whispered, "Hold on, lady, not tonight." Zoe stirred. "Daddy," she murmured, rubbing her eyes. "Who is that?" "Someone who needs our help," he answered, not missing a beat. The truck growled back onto the road, tires barely gripping the ice. Derek's house wasn't far, just up the ridge past the tree line. A small place, run down but solid. It had stood for 50 years and would stand another storm. He just hoped it was warm enough to keep the woman alive. By the time he got home, her breathing was better, but her skin was still too cold. He carried her inside past the patchwork walls and creaking floorboards and laid her gently on the couch near the old wood stove. Zoe stood watching, silent, like she knew something important was happening. No fear, just curiosity and something else. Compassion. Derek peeled off the woman's soaked boots, wrapped her feet in wool socks, and tucked a faded quilt around her. He poured chamomile tea into a chipped mug, pressed it gently to her lips, and whispered, "Come back now." "You're safe." She stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. Blue eyes opened slowly, confused. "Where?" "Maple Hollow," Derek said. "You were stranded. I found you. You're okay now." She didn't speak again for a while. Her throat moved as she swallowed the tea. Derek could see she was still shaken physically and emotionally, but alive. Zoe stepped forward, dragging her own blanket behind her. "She can use mine too," she offered shyly. "It's got stars." The woman smiled barely, but it was real. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. For a moment there was no storm outside, no class divide, no race. Just a mechanic, his daughter, and a stranger clinging to warmth and life. Later that night, as the fire glowed red and the house fell quiet, the woman finally spoke again. "You didn't even ask who I am," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. Derek looked at her from across the room. "Didn't need to. You needed help." That was enough. She studied him, this man with oil under his nails, rough hands and tired eyes. And he hadn't flinched once. Not even when he saw her pearls. "My name's Evelyn," she said finally. "Evelyn Ramsey?" Derek gave a nod. "Nice to meet you, Evelyn." Zoe peeked around the corner. "Is she a princess, Daddy?" Evelyn laughed for the first time that night. "Not quite," she said, then looked at Derek. "But maybe your daughter just saved one." And in that tiny house somewhere beyond the reach of the storm, something quiet and extraordinary began to grow. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What would you have done in Derek's place that night? Do you think Evelyn will ever be the same after this moment? If this story touched your heart, comment 100 below and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to share this video with someone who believes in the power of kindness. The wood-burning stove hissed softly as the logs settled, casting orange shadows that danced across the living room. Evelyn Ramsey, now wrapped in thick wool and nestled under a handmade quilt, sat curled on the edge of the couch, her hands cradling a chipped ceramic mug. Her voice was still hoarse, and her breath shaky, but color had returned to her face. Her eyes, though tired, flicked constantly to the little girl who sat just across from her, Zoe Hayes, wrapped in a fleece blanket covered in glittering stars. Derek stood at the stove stirring a pot of soup, the scent of garlic and thyme cutting through the lingering scent of pine and wet wool. "You didn't even ask who I was," Evelyn said, finally breaking the silence. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready," Derek replied without turning. "I could have been anyone. A threat, a stranger with a secret." He ladled soup into a mismatched bowl and brought it to her. "You were a person freezing to death in a snowbank. That was all I needed to know." She took the bowl slowly, fingers brushing his for a moment. There was a strange energy in that brief contact, like the room had gone even quieter. Zoe piped up, "Are you a princess?" Her eyes sparkled with the kind of curiosity only a 6-year-old could possess. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Not quite, sweetheart, but I guess I do wear nice clothes sometimes." "Do you have a castle?" Zoe leaned in. "She drives a car bigger than our whole kitchen," Derek muttered, taking a seat across from them. "Close enough." Evelyn gave a weak laugh, but it faded as her eyes fell on the photo above the mantel, Derek holding Zoe as a baby, beside a woman whose smile was exhausted but radiant. "Your wife?" she asked gently. Was Derek answered. "Anna passed 2 years ago. Ovarian cancer, came fast. We didn't have much time." Zoe didn't react. She had heard the story, lived through it, but something about Derek saying it aloud to a stranger seemed to ground it further in reality. "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered. Derek nodded. "We all carry our losses." A deep hush settled over the room again, the kind of silence that didn't ask to be filled. The storm outside had calmed, but frost still crusted the windows, and the sky beyond remained an unforgiving gray. Derek stood and moved toward the door, grabbing his boots and coat. "Where are you going?" Evelyn asked quickly, her voice catching with panic. "I'm going to try and get your car started," he said simply. "It's not safe to let it sit frozen too long." "You don't have to." "Yeah, I do," he said, then softer. "That's just who I am." He stepped outside, snow crunching beneath his boots. Evelyn watched through the frost-specked glass, her breath fogging the window. There was something almost surreal about the man, stoic, strong, yet gentle in ways she couldn't quite name. Inside, Zoe tugged on her sleeve. "Want to see my drawings?" Evelyn turned, heart caught somewhere between awe and ache. "I'd love to." They sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through crayon illustrations of stars' houses and stick figures labeled Daddy, Me, and Mommy in Heaven. "Sometimes I think she watches from the sky," Zoe said, pointing to a star-covered page. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "I think she probably does." Outdoors, Derek wiped snow from the Range Rover's hood. He was surprised by the model top-tier latest year, not the kind of vehicle someone lost in a storm normally drove. As he cracked open the hood, he caught sight of a small embossed tag inside the glove compartment. Whitestone Automotive Group. His brow furrowed. He'd heard of them. A massive company. High-end cars, cutting-edge research. The name was on every auto blog and engineering newsletter he followed. He tucked that thought away, replaced the spark plugs from his personal stash, jump-started the battery and tested the engine. It roared back to life, clean, powerful. No signs of damage. No reason it should have failed. He narrowed his eyes. Back inside, Evelyn stood slowly, hands trembling, not from the cold, but from a fear she hadn't named yet. She moved to the window just as Derek stepped back inside, cheeks flushed from the wind. "You're all set," he said, brushing snow off his shoulders. "Thank you," she said, her voice a whisper. They stood there, the silence between them humming. "Why didn't you tell me?" Derek finally asked. "Tell you what, who you are." "I saw the logo. Whitestone. You're not just someone who got lost. You're Evelyn Ramsey, CEO of one of the biggest companies in the country." Evelyn's shoulders stiffened. "I wasn't hiding. I wanted to be seen without that name." Derek crossed his arms, but not in anger. "And now that I've seen you," Evelyn smiled softly, "now I'm terrified." Zoe ran in between them, clutching her bear. "Can she stay for dinner, Daddy?" "Just tonight," Evelyn bent down. "Only if it's okay with your dad." Derek hesitated, then nodded once. "Soup's still warm." Evelyn blinked, surprised by her own tears. As night fell again over Maple Hollow, the three of them sat under one roof, strangers no longer. Just people grieving, healing, colliding on a snowy road that neither of them planned to take. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What would you have done if a stranger appeared at your door in the middle of a deadly storm? Would you let them in, or would fear have stopped you? If this story moved you, comment 100 below. Tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to share this video with someone who believes in the kindness of strangers. Morning came with a quiet grace. The snow, once fierce and blinding, now lay like a soft blanket over Maple Hollow. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window in golden shafts, catching motes of dust that danced silently in the warmth of a new day. Evelyn stood at the counter, wearing a worn flannel shirt over her cashmere sweater, stirring eggs in an old iron skillet. Her designer heels had been replaced with wool socks, and her diamond earrings rested forgotten on a side table. It was strange how quickly comfort could feel like home. Across the table, Zoe munched on toast shaped like stars. Derek sat beside her, his hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, eyes watching the two girls like they were a dream he hadn't expected to wake into. "You didn't have to cook," he murmured, his voice low but warm. Evelyn smiled without turning. "Let me do something real." Zoe beamed. "It's the best breakfast ever." When they finished, Evelyn helped Derek wash the dishes, her manicured hands scrubbing the same way she once signed million-dollar contracts. But here in this quiet home filled with mismatched plates and love-worn walls, she was just Evelyn. Not a CEO, not the figure on magazine covers, just a woman who'd been saved, and now somehow was being healed. Later that afternoon, Derek walked her to the door. Her Range Rover now purred like new in the driveway. The storm had passed, the road was clear. She could leave. She should leave. But she didn't move. Instead, Evelyn turned to Derek and handed him a folded note. "Please don't read this until after I'm gone." He raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "Something I needed to say, but wouldn't be able to say if you were looking at me." Derek nodded, accepting it without question. Zoe ran over, throwing her arms around Evelyn's legs. "Are you going to come back?" Evelyn knelt to her level. "I'd like to, if your dad says it's okay." Zoe looked up at Derek expectantly. His eyes didn't flinch. "We'll leave the porch light on." Evelyn stood heartful and aching all at once. "Goodbye, Zoe. Thank you for the stars." As she slid into the driver's seat and pulled away, Derek opened the note slowly, his hands rough but careful. It read, "Dear Derek, that night, I don't think I was just lost in the storm. I think I was lost in life. You reminded me what it means to be human, to be kind without a reason to be strong, without shouting. I don't want to just be someone who survived. I want to be someone who gives back what was given to me. That's why I'd like to offer you something. In 2 weeks, Whitestone Automotive is opening a regional training center in Missoula. It's built to give people second chances, technicians, single parents, folks who know hard work better than anyone. I want you to be the lead instructor. Flexible hours, full benefits, room to grow, and I took care of your mortgage. You won't have to choose between groceries and heating bills anymore. You gave me back something I hadn't felt in years. Dignity. Thank you, Evelyn. Derek sat down on the porch steps, the note trembling slightly in his hand. For the first time in years, his throat tightened, not from cold or exhaustion, but from the unfamiliar weight of being seen, of being valued not because of what he had, but because of who he was. Zoe peeked outside her tiny frame, framed by the screen door. "Daddy, you okay?" He wiped his face quickly. "Yeah, sweetheart." Better than okay, days turned to weeks, and as promised, a car pulled into the driveway on a Friday afternoon. But this time, Evelyn didn't arrive in a luxury SUV. She stepped out of a simple sedan, wearing jeans and a ponytail, holding a box of cookies in one hand and a blueprint folder in the other. Zoe sprinted out with her bear, yelling her name. Derek stood at the porch, arms crossed, a half-smile playing on his lips. "You didn't have to come all the way here," he called down. "I wanted to," Evelyn said. "Besides, you still haven't said yes." He gestured toward the blueprint tube. "Show me what you're building first." Inside, they spread the plans out on the kitchen table. A modern center with garages, classrooms, childcare built into the floor plan. "You really thought of everything," he said. Evelyn shrugged. "I thought of you." He stared at her for a long moment, and then softly he said, "All right then, let's build something." And they did. Over the next months, Derek didn't just take the job, he shaped it. The center became a place where second chances weren't rare, they were expected. Where Zoe became the heart of every hallway, and where Evelyn, no longer a ghost in glass towers, found herself standing side by side with the very people she once forgot how to see. Years later, when people asked how the Whitestone training program became a national model, Derek would only smile and say, "It started with a storm." And a stranger, who ended up being family. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption. But we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What did this story mean to you? Have you ever met someone who changed your life in just one night? If this story touched you, comment 100 below to let us know. Tell us what country you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And please share this video if you believe kindness still has the power to rewrite someone's life.